Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this very special and very important Fireside Chat Eating Disorders and Suicide with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We are so honored, so humbled to have this incredibly important conversation today. And I definitely want to throw out a trigger warning that we are definitely going to be talking about suicide and eating disorders. It is such an important topic, and we are so happy that you are all joining us today. It is Eating Disorders Awareness Month, and we thought that it was so important to have you join us in this conversation. And I believe that we know. So please join me in welcoming the fabulous Dr. Doreen Marshall from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Welcome, Doreen. We are so thrilled to have you here today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So before we get started, I would love for you to share a little bit about you, about your role at the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and all the amazing work, life-saving work that you all do day in and day out.
Great. Well, first, thanks for having me join you today. I'm Doreen Marshall. I'm the Vice President of Mission Engagement at the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And so what that means is I do a lot of work to advance AFSP's mission in bringing hope to those impacted by suicide and saving lives. And I work with a lot of partner organizations, so thrilled for the partnership with your organization. And I'm a psychologist by training. So I've worked across a number of settings before coming to the nonprofit world, and I've been in suicide prevention for just about 20 years. If you haven't heard of AFSP, we have chapters throughout the entire United States. We're a volunteer-driven organization. So if you have an interest in suicide prevention, or if you've been impacted in any way, we invite you to join our cause. And we do lots of work in communities, particularly around education, around suicide prevention and mental health.
I don't think there's enough words to say thank you for all of your life-saving work. And when I say life-saving work, I've had many individuals close to me, many loved ones reach out to your organization and just get so many resources, and more than anything, feel so not alone for the first time. Because something that I think the first time you and I connected almost a year ago now, we really talked about just the isolation that goes into individuals that have depression, that are contemplating suicide and eating disorders. And the lack of conversation there has historically been around this topic. So I think it's so important for us to be able to have this conversation. And again, like I said at the beginning of this live, please know that we are going to be talking about suicide. We are going to be talking about eating disorders. Please take care of yourself. If you need resources, someone from our teams, both of our teams, will be putting information in the chat, but please know that you're not alone. And I am just so grateful to you and to the organization for providing the space for us to have a conversation. So I want to get started with a few questions. We know that individuals that are experiencing eating disorders have an 18 times more likely chance to die by suicide than the general population. What do you think, or what are some of the causes, connections between eating disorders and suicide?
It's a really great question and a complex one. So as we know, many people who struggle with suicidal thoughts or have made an attempt in their life may have an underlying mental health issue. That is also the case with some eating disorders, that there may also be an underlying mental health issue. And I think what's important to remember is that these are things, mental health, our wellness, that we can influence in real time. So, putting a statistic about increased risk isn't the end of the story. It's more of what I try and remind people is that just like we might know about increased risk of a health concern, for example, if we have a family history, knowing that you might be at increased risk for suicide due to your mental health or due to having an eating disorder is really information for you. And it means that there are things you can do to help prevent that outcome. But we have to take it seriously. We
Yes.
have to understand that this is part of our overall health. And I think what's important to remember is that many of the same groups that struggle are also at increased risk for suicide, even without having eating disorder. So, for example, suicide is the second leading cause of death for young people, eating disorder, no eating disorder. So
Yeah.
we know that this is a leading cause of death, and we have to take it seriously, pay attention,
Yeah.
but also know that it's preventable, that there are things we can do to help prevent that outcome.
Thank you so much for that answer. And I know that just hearing you share, and what are some of the things that are preventable? Like what can we be doing? I know further down we're gonna talk about warning signs and all of that stuff, but from your perspective, what are some of the things that maybe the medical community, the therapeutic community, but the lay community can do to prevent suicide?
Yeah, well, I think what we're learning is that people are starting to get more and more comfortable having conversations about mental health. I mean, even the dialogue that you and I are having
Yeah.
today, 10 or 15 years ago,
Mm-mm.
this would not have even been a dialogue where your organization, my organization, are speaking openly on a public forum about eating disorders and suicide risk. So, I think some of what we can do as individuals, whether you don't have to be a professional to do it, is not be afraid to ask, to trust your gut. If you know someone is struggling and you think they might be thinking about suicide, to not be afraid to just ask the question. A lot of people are afraid to ask. They're afraid they may make the situation somehow worse. And what we know is that not only does it not make it worse, it creates an opening for you to have a real conversation about your mental health. And I think this is one of the things that our organization share, is that we both represent issues that have been in the dark for quite some time. And it's really just recently, in the last, 5 to 10 years, where communities are having these conversations, individuals are having these conversations, and families are.
I love how you talked about, by bringing light to these conversations, you give individuals an opportunity to reach out and to not feel so alone and not feel so stigmatized. As someone who has lived experience with both topics, I will tell you that it was a shame that I carried for so long. And what I'm so grateful for is the fact that we have open forums like this, that, individuals can log on to this, follow your amazing page, attend a webinar, and attend like our support groups and say, me too. When you're sitting in a space where someone else is speaking your language, when someone else is saying that you are not the anomaly, that it's okay for you to experience these issues, and that there's help and there's hope and there's light. Because when we start pushing light through cracks, that's when healing happens. And that's why I think it is so important. And I think, and it's probably the very similar to what you experience every day, is we always balance how much can we talk about, how much is triggering, and if we say nothing, we allow things to continue exactly how they are. So another quick question that just sort of spurred, and I'm sorry to keep on like going in different directions, but I love what you're saying, is how does one effectively talk about it without being, triggering, or, without, in a sense, like for me, I'm always thinking of, how do I bring information without doing harm, with bringing education and with making individuals feel connected?
It's such an important question. And I think there's a couple of things you can do. One, you always want to make time for these conversations. So this is not the conversation to ask someone when you really don't have time to
Yeah.
listen, because what we're really doing is inviting someone to share something that's deeply personal, often deeply painful.
Yeah.
And really, we want to make time for those. But I think that the biggest thing is really to just kind of use this as an expression of care and of concern, and help the person understand that this is something they're experiencing, but it's okay. So, I might say to someone, you're going through a lot. I know this has to be impacting you. It seems overwhelming, and I'm wondering, how you're doing with it all. And then maybe saying, sometimes when people go through things like this, they may have thoughts they don't want to be alive, or even thoughts about wanting to end their life. I'm wondering if you're having those kinds of thoughts.
Yeah.
To not be afraid to put it out there. And then I think to reassure the person, and if they're having those kind of thoughts, that you're someone they can talk to,
Yeah.
that even if you don't know how in the moment, you're going to help them find the help they need, and you're going to be with them through it. I think just that reassurance that you're not alone, I'm here to help, and that I'm not going to abandon you because you're struggling. Those kinds of things are so important. And then, of course, to help them connect to resources. The other thing I would say is, if you put it out there and the person doesn't seem receptive, it's important that you don't give up, because I think sometimes people aren't ready to share, but they'll never forget that you reached out. And you might just say, look, if you're ever wanting to talk about this, I want you to know I'm a safe person. I'm someone you can talk about this with, and I will help you. I may not have the answers, but I'm here to listen. Those kinds of statements really make a difference to someone who's struggling, because even in the moment, if they can't engage, or for some reason it's not the right time, they won't forget that you're somebody safe to talk to.
Yeah, so amazing. And I just want to share for individuals that are coming to this conversation from your page that may be experiencing eating disorders, or believe that they have a loved one that has an experience or experiencing an eating disorder. Exactly what Dr. Marshall said can be used for talking about eating disorders as well. I loved that you talked about planning time. You don't want to rush through this conversation. So much of what you did is you used I statements. You talked from your perspective. I'm really concerned. I've noticed. And the one thing that we share so much of the time, and you know what, I bring this up in our loved ones, friends, and family group, is people will ask me, what would have been helpful for you? And, for me, so many people shared what they thought I needed. You need to do this. You should do that. And what I wanted more than anything was for someone to say to me, I am really sorry that you're going through this, because just like suicide, just like depression, anxiety, eating disorders are not a disorder of choice. They are not a disorder of vanity. They are serious mental illness. I and the 29 million Americans that, will experience an eating disorder in their lifetime do not wake up one morning, look outside the window and say, it's a beautiful day to have an eating disorder today. And yet so many of us are treated in that way. And so if you align with your loved one and say, I'm really sorry that this is happening, I can't even imagine how difficult it is. Please know that I am here to walk next to you, and I'm here to help in whichever way possible. And I loved that you shared also, if you are able, connect to care, because us as loved ones are not the ones that can help your loved one walk through this. They need access to care, just as if, and I said this yesterday, like, you would never look, if you broke a bone, look at your bone and say, oh, heal bone. We can't do that with above our necks either. If it was that easy, that we wouldn't have the millions and millions of individuals that are experiencing this every day. So please, if you're able, connect to care. You have resources that we pinned at the top. You can connect to the Alliance. You can connect to either of our organizations. And we will do everything in our power to connect to care. So I really appreciated that. And I think that, there's so many similarities between our two topics. And in fact, we can't talk about one without the other. So thank you so much for that. My next question is, there's been a lot of news recently, the tragic news about, Chelsea Christ. And one of the things that, struck me so much is that, she appeared to have it all together. And, I really have to say also that there tends to be an archaic stereotype of who struggles with mental health issues, what they look like. And she just completely, like, that everything that happened just eradicated that completely. So how can we be more effective at preventing death by suicide in individuals with eating disorders and other mental illness?
Yeah, I mean, this is such an important question. I think your point about not assuming, right, that if someone presents one way on the outside, that what's going on with them on the inside. I think a big piece that I always encourage people to do is to trust your gut. So if we're talking today and you're watching and you're wondering about someone in your life saying, gee, I wonder if that person is struggling with thoughts of suicide or struggling with an eating disorder, to not discount that feeling that you get, right? That you're noticing something. I think often we downplay what we see, or we don't. We think, oh, well, this person seems okay, so there's not a need to reach out. And to really, this is the time to just stay connected to everyone in your life in a way that even if you get a little feeling that something might be wrong, to not be afraid to reach out. One of the things about our common cause, or what's common about our causes, is that they are both situations where the person struggling feels very isolated and different from the rest of the world. So they kind of look around and they see what seems like everyone, kind of going about their lives. And meanwhile, they have this struggle that's often hidden,
Mm-hmm.
often silent, and they're kind of going through life with this very big internal pain. And I think it just takes someone to notice sometimes. Um, and the other thing I would say is, and I appreciate you sharing about your story, because I
Mm-hmm.
think when we can talk about our own mental health, we model that for the people who may not have the words or know how to talk about that. We send a message that it's okay.
Yeah.
So, I would say if you're someone who has benefited from treatment, share those stories, because there's someone struggling who's wondering if treatment is going to make a difference. And if it has for you, sharing that, I think, helps people feel, okay, if this person can get help, maybe so can I.
Yeah, and one of the things that I found very recently, specifically in the pandemic, because as we know, there's been such increases, in death by suicide as well as with eating disorders during the pandemic, is I've really come to, even personally, being very open with even my experiences at this point. At the beginning of the pandemic, when no one knew anything, I was actually on a board call with another board that I sit on, and my anxiety was extremely heightened, to a place where I hadn't been in decades. And, I was sitting, we were going around like the proverbial virtual table, and everyone's like, I'm doing great, I'm doing fine. And I started to think, what is wrong with me? Because I'm not doing okay right now. And so by the time it came to me and they're like, Joanna, how are you? And I'm like, terrible, I'm like, I'm having a really hard time. And just by me being open and vulnerable, it allowed other people to come to the table with their vulnerabilities and say, you know what? I'm actually not doing that great either. And so what you shared about, sharing your lived experience and talking about it, it's exceptional to me that now I don't want to say it's a common occurrence, but it's a lot more of a common occurrence for individuals to say, yes, I have experienced an eating disorder, or yes, I have attempted suicide, or I have, I have experienced depression and anxiety. And by doing that, you're making other individuals feel safe and comfortable to use their voice and not feel so different or the exception. So I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah, one of the things that many people do not know is that, like upwards of 90+% of people who have made a suicide attempt in their life do not go on to die by suicide. So these are stories, often stories of great hope,
Yeah.
right? That someone has reached out for help, that they've connected to help. And I think that's the same with recovery for eating disorders, that it doesn't mean that the person never has another struggle in their life ever,
Yeah.
but what it means is that treatment did help, or treatment is helping. And we know that that's complex, and things like, I appreciate what you brought up, because as our life goes on, different periods of stress can affect our mental health. The things that happen in our day-to-day life, loss, changes, even good changes can
Yeah.
impact us. And so, this isn't a one and done, right? Like, oh, I'm done with that. Mental health is something that we pay a lot of attention to. And we often have to kind of keep checking in with ourselves. How are we doing as things change in our lives, as we experience different things? But it requires a proactive approach, right? Like we do for our physical health. We're just finally getting to the point, I think, where we're really as a society doing it for our mental health as well.
Which is so imperative and so needed, and something that I say all the time in our support groups is, you do not recover to utopia, you recover to life. And life isn't sunshine, bunnies, and rainbows every single day. There are sunshines, there are bunnies, there are rainbows, but there's also some really hard times. And just how you go to your general internist to check on your physical health, we need to be able to check in on our mental health, and to feel comfortable with having conversations, and to check in on people. One of the things that I just wanted to bring up, that I read in the comments, is that there's no look for anything that we're talking about. Again, like, for so long in the eating disorder world, there was this archaic stereotype of who develops eating disorders and what they look like. Very much that, like, I mean, definitely in my generation, the Lifetime movie on eating disorders is who we would think. And I know that there's a large part of the population that just has no idea what I'm talking about right now, but that's who it was. And yet we know that, of all individuals that experience eating disorders, only 6% are medically underweight. They do not discriminate between age, gender, race, class, sexual orientation, ability, neurodiversity, body shape, and size. And I think and I would assume, but I would love for your feedback, it's the same thing with suicide too.
Absolutely. In fact, we know that suicide risk there's environmental underpinnings, there's biological, like there's no one person. And like you said, it cuts across all races, genders, ethnicities, socioeconomic class. I mean, there's no one person that dies by suicide and other groups that aren't at risk. So, I think what it requires us to do is really kind of broaden our ideas about what a struggle or what someone who struggles looks like, and realize it could be any of us. And also realize that people function pretty well sometimes when they're struggling. So just because someone's showing up at work every day, or seems to be, doesn't mean that they are not with struggle. And so it really, I think it challenges us to really broaden our ideas about what someone who might struggle looks like, and to recognize that it can be any of us. And so, certainly that's the case with suicide. And I think the other piece is that this is why it's important to ask,
Yeah.
right? Because chances are pretty good someone in your life has struggled, and no one has ever asked because they look like the person who had it all together, right? And so I think this is a time where we really need to lean in and not be afraid to proactively talk about these things: mental health, suicide risk, eating disorders. Like, this is a time. Substance use, I mean,
Yeah.
the list goes on, right? These are not things that occur in isolation either. So sometimes we may notice something, and it may be an opening to, gee, I wonder if this person is also struggling with some other
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, and someone so beautifully wrote, is that oftentimes it's the bias that keeps people from seeking help or receiving the help too. So that is specifically why conversations like this, and why we are so grateful to you and to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention for having this conversation, for allowing us to be at this table with you. So it's really important, because I think on the whole, both in the medical community, both in the general community, we need to do a better job at, again, sort of shattering that stigma of who experiences this, and what individuals look like. So
Yeah.
I know that we're starting to run out of time, which honestly, Dr. Marshall, I could sit and talk to you all day, and I have to be honest with you. And I really just appreciate everyone who's on, and for your willingness to have a conversation. And again, be very, very aware that there are resources for you. If you do need help and support, we are out there. So my last few questions are, what are some warning signs to look for if you think that your loved one is having thoughts of suicide?
So we think of warning signs as kind of being in three buckets. So talk, behavior, and mood. So talk is that the person is talking in a way that is like indicates a lot of hopelessness, that they don't see a future. You know, they may actually mention suicide or thoughts of killing themselves, but a lot of times it's even more veiled than that. And so it could be they're saying, I don't see the point in going on. It's not going to matter anyway. I have no purpose. Those kind of statements that indicate a lot of hopelessness. And certainly, you know, if they're talking about suicide, that's certainly an indicator for sure. And not just verbally, right? We're looking social media posts, things like other ways people communicate. It's really important to tune in if you get a sense that this person is communicating hopelessness and thoughts of suicide. The second a group is behavior. So you're really looking for changes in behavior, like what's usual for someone. And some of the things we see is people may start to isolate, or they may stop doing things that normally they would have liked to do. They may just start blocking people or not responding to people in their life. They may actually start to research ending one's life or putting affairs in order, or those kinds of things. And certainly you may notice changes of things like substance use changes, just things that like indicate like this is not what's typical for this person. The last thing is mood. So we definitely look for mood states around hopelessness, but also intense anger and rage, someone who's extremely irritable, someone who feels a lot of shame or is facing something that they feel very shameful about. And I know that's something that eating disorders often are connected to, that emotional state of feeling shame. And so I think those mood states are really important, but really you're seeing someone who has a picture where they don't have a sense of the future. They're feeling very hopeless, and they're also not able to generate other solutions. So they tend to think they have no other solution to end the pain they're in than to attempt or die by suicide. And I did want to say one other thing,
Sure.
you don't mind, that
Yeah, please.
you know, as somebody who was a practicing therapist for many years, you know, I always want to convey two things about help. One is that a therapist can only help you with what you share. So if you are in treatment and you're not sharing the depth of your struggle for fear that the person may judge you, I can tell you therapists have heard lots of stuff. It's without judgment.
Yeah.
But there's often a fear like I can share this much, but I can't share that I'm struggling with thoughts of suicide, or I can't share the full depth of what I'm experiencing in terms of pain. They can only help you with what you share. And so it's so important that you go in defenses down and just share, give them the opportunity to help. The other thing I would say is if you have tried treatment or you're in therapy and you think this isn't working, don't give up. It may be that there's another provider that's a better fit. And often we find that, you know, finding someone who's trained, for example, specifically to work with people in the eating disorder community or specifically with lived experience of suicide can be a better fit. But really don't give up. That may, just because it's not a good fit, just may mean that this person's not the right therapist for you. But that help is still out there, and don't give up till you find it.
I could not agree with you more. And one of the things that came to mind when you were just sharing is my therapist years ago said, I don't know what I don't know. And, you know, if you show up and give me the version of you, and for me and so many individuals who experience eating disorders, you know, it's that facade, it's that mask, it's everything's okay. I don't want to shatter this illusion that it's not okay. And, you know, my therapist just said to me, she's like, if I don't know the story, if I don't know the full story, there's really nothing that I can do to help you. And you're spending your resources, you're spending your time, you know, and you should be able to you deserve to get everything you can out of therapy. And cannot say that enough, that sometimes the first clinician you go into is that right clinician for you, and sometimes it's just not. And sometimes you're working with someone for a while, and then all of a sudden you hit a place where then it's time to move on. And that doesn't mean that you did something wrong. It didn't mean that the clinician did something wrong. It's just, we're all human beings navigating life, and we're doing the best we can. So before we wrap up, I would love to just ask you in this final moment, any other things that you would like to share with the individuals that are joining us today?
Well, again, I so appreciate the time with you in this important conversation. I could talk to you all day. I think we have so much
Yes.
shared common ground in terms of both
Yes.
of our causes. I would say a couple of things. If you've been impacted by suicide, either you have your own lived experience, if you've lost someone in your life to suicide, to know that there's a community of support out there for you and you are not alone. And that's a message I know your organization says as well. You are not alone. And that, to check out our resources, certainly check out both organizations, but to know that others have traveled that journey, and they can help you see the way. And so even if right now you're in a dark place and you don't believe hope is out there, believe us, it is out there. It's not always the first therapist or the first thing you connect to, but it is out there and you're worth it. So don't give up. Your life matters.
Thank you so much for that. And I would just echo that. And, one of the things that I am so grateful to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is all of the resources you provide, all the education you provide. And also, this is Eating Disorders Awareness Month. And when we were thinking about what conversations we want to have, and this was our number one. This absolutely was our number one, because of the co-occurrence between eating disorders and suicide, because our community, but all of our communities, deserve better than to feel that they have to do this alone. And so we just want to remind everyone that we are both resources out there for you. The Alliance hold free weekly therapist-led support groups that are currently virtual. We will be going back to in-person hopefully sooner rather than later, but we'll definitely keep our virtual support groups as well. And next weekend, February 25th through 27th, we are thrilled to have you partner with us for our Not One More weekend, where we will have our day of support, where we have a 16-hour support group marathon and our rally for recovery. Please know that, if you need to talk to someone now, you can text 741-741 to the crisis text line. You can actually just text TALK. You can call either of our organizations. You can find us online. Please know that this conversation does not end here, is that we are there for you. We are here. Dr. Marshall, on behalf of the Alliance, I am so grateful to know you, to work alongside you. I'm so excited for the future to do all the things with you. But more than anything, I just, on behalf of my former self, that had it been a few more minutes, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Thank you for that. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for showing up for our community and the general community. But more than anything, just thank you so much for being an ally and a support. And for all of you that are watching, thank you for being part of this conversation. Thank you for showing up. Please know that you matter, that you're not alone. And like what Dr. Marshall said, that it does get better. So have a wonderful night, everyone. Take care, be safe, and we'll talk with you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.